Tonight, remembering Pope Francis. We look back at the life and legacy of the beloved 88-year-old pontiff, plus the Trump tariffs. China now warning other countries against making trade deals with the United States. And Easter at the White House. President Trump and the First Lady welcomed thousands to the annual White House Easter egg roll. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The sound heard around the world. The bells toll at St. Peter's Square to announce the death of Pope Francis, who died today at the age of 88.
He was a good man, worked hard. He loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
President Trump ordered the flags in the United States be flown at half-staff to honor Pope Francis. The White House has not said yet if the president will travel for the funeral. And good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder. New tonight, we now know the Pope's cause of death. The Vatican says it was a cerebral stroke that led to coma and irreversible heart failure. The Pope's death came just one day after he appeared in public for Easter. Dale Hurd has this look back at the life and legacy of a man known as the People's Pope.
In Rome, Vatican officials announced that at 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. He was 88 years old. His death came after weeks in the hospital with pneumonia, and one day after returning to the Vatican to deliver his Easter message, and to also meet Vice President J.D. Vance. But at Mass, he struggled to wish everyone a happy Easter, and then a Vatican official read his message for him. Born in Buenos Aires, he worked as a janitor and a nightclub bouncer while studying to be a chemist. Then Jorge Mario Bergoglio would enter the priesthood and become the first pope from the Americas, the first from the Jesuit order, and the first to take the name Francis. He was also the first to become pope after his predecessor Benedict resigned. In 2013, Benedict declared he would be the first pontiff in 600 years to leave the throne of St. Peter alive. His name paid homage to Francis of Assisi, dedicating himself to the less fortunate, washing the feet of prisoners, and showing his desire to be close to the people, often opting to ride in an open-air car instead of the bulletproof Pope-mobile, and regularly stepping out to shake hands or to give someone a hug.
He traveled around the world and always met with people in the slums, in prisons, everyone on the margins of the society. They were his priority. He said that the Vatican and the Catholic Church should be a field hospital for wounded souls.
Sono scomunicati. He was also one of the Church's more outspoken and openly political popes, often taking progressive stands and addressing issues such as immigration and the environment, and criticizing both Joe Biden for his view on abortion and Donald Trump for his deportation policy. He also once said of a reportedly gay priest, "If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" Zero. And he declared zero tolerance for child sex abuse, a problem that's plagued the Church. Tributes from around the world have begun pouring in. According to his wishes, Francis will be buried in a simple wooden casket. The Pope's funeral is expected to be held in the next 4 to 6 days, after his body lies in state in St. Peter's Basilica for public viewing. And then attention will turn to who will be chosen as the next Pope and the future direction of the Catholic Church. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. And joining us now is Ambassador Francis Rooney, former ambassador to the Holy See. Ambassador, welcome. So I'd love to just start with your reaction to Pope Francis's passing and what you see as his lasting legacy.
Well, I think obviously we're all very sad to lose the Pope. I think the most lasting and durable aspects of his legacy will be the way he pushed the boundaries of church doctrine and brought subjects up that most people don't talk about too much. And then the way he was assiduously in pushing to remediate the plight of marginalized people, trafficking victims, migrants, refugees. He started out right away when he went to Lampedusa, early in his papacy, when he said he wanted to oppose the globalization of indifference. And that kind of became a motto for his papacy, quite frankly.
Yeah. At times, there seemed to be this competing narrative about Pope Francis. Some saw him as a progressive, promoting political agendas more than orthodox church doctrine. Others will say that he was a pastor first, and as Dale mentioned in that story, calling him, the ministry of the Catholic Church a field hospital. How do you see it, Ambassador?
I think he was both of those things. I mean, when you look at his reaching out to the suffering and the marginalized people, he's a pastor. The way he embraced those children and washed the feet of those nuns, that's a pastor. But then on the other hand, he wrote the first environmentally oriented encyclical early in his papacy, recognizing global warming and criticizing the deniers and talking about the great harm that's going to happen in some of the poorest parts of the world if we don't deal with climate change. So he pushed forward on a lot of policies as well.
Yeah. Did Pope Francis start something new, Ambassador, with his outreach to evangelicals and his openness to the more charismatic Catholics?
I think he did. I think, his motto was a church with nobody in it's just a building. And he reached out to everybody. He reached out to the gays. He reached out to divorced women to get communion. He reached out to all these vulnerable people and brought them in. I think that he was a very inclusive person, inclusive of humanity. And anybody that wanted to hear the message of God, he was ready to deliver it to them.
Yeah. All right, Ambassador Francis Rooney, we appreciate you coming on this evening and sharing your thoughts with us on the late Pope Francis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And a little bit more now about Pope Francis's history of working with evangelicals. In an interview on our CBN News YouTube channel, we talked to Justin Murph, who used to work for CBN, about working with Pope Francis.
And one of the things that was unique about the ecumenical engagement from Pope Francis was this willingness to see media not as something to be afraid of, but really as a great catechetical tool. In other words, a tool that we can use to help teach the fundamental basics of the faith. And Superbook certainly has been a tool that many Catholic dioceses and archdioceses around the world are using, even today, to be able to help teach children the basics of our Christian faith and tradition.
And to hear more of this interview and see all of our coverage about the legacy of Pope Francis, please visit cbnnews.com. In other news, in Jerusalem, America's new ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, arrived to start his new job. He went to the Western Wall for his first official act.
Well, it gives me an extraordinary sense of personal joy to have been named by the president as an evangelical Christian believer to take this post. I never get to the point where I don't learn something. I never get to the point where I don't experience something being in this very magnificent place.
Huckabee presented his diplomatic credentials to Israeli President Isaac Herzog and said he comes with a sense of awe, like he did when he first came to Israel more than 50 years ago. He said he stands with the people of Israel and the Jewish people because that is a divine position. At the White House, a busy Monday, top of mind, the U.S. military conducted airstrikes against Yemen. And there's the report that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth discussed military action again on the Signal app, this time reportedly including his wife and his brother in the chat. For more on all of this, let's go to our CBN News senior White House correspondent, Kelly Wright. Kelly, what more can you tell us about the latest military strike on the Houthi rebels in Yemen? And what are the developments with Secretary Hegseth's Signal chat?
The U.S. launched a series of military strikes on the Yemeni capital of Sana'a. And as a result of that, they also conducted strikes on a key oil port in Yemen. Now, the U.S. airstrikes are targeting the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels, which in the past attacked U.S. merchant ships and vessels from other countries sailing the Red Sea. Houthi rebels say the U.S. attacks hit a popular market district in Sana'a, killing 12 people and injuring several civilians in the capital city. U.S. Military Central Command declined to comment on the airstrikes. Meanwhile, there are reports that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth once again used the Signal app to describe details of the military action. This time, he reportedly included his wife and brother in that chat, prompting his critics to call for his dismissal. Well, at today's White House Easter roll, Secretary Hegseth talked to reporters about the matter.
See, this is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
All right, Hegseth maintaining old news, nothing to see there. Kelly, keeping our focus on the Middle East region, let's focus on Iran, which of course sponsors the Houthi rebels in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hamas in Gaza. What are the latest developments with talks between Iran and the United States?
Yeah, Jenna, these are very important matters. The United States is trying to negotiate with Iran to stop its rapid advance toward building a nuclear weapon. On Saturday, President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Rome. The two said they made very good progress in their direct and indirect talks. President Trump says Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Because of that, he has repeatedly threatened to unleash airstrikes targeting Iran's nuclear program if the two countries fail to reach a deal.
I'm for stopping Iran, very simply, from having a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
So
I want Iran to be great and prosperous and terrific. I stopped them once they were broke and they didn't have any money for Hamas. They didn't have any money for Hezbollah. There wouldn't have been an October 7th disaster. They were broke. They had no money, and they weren't spending it to terrorist organizations because they had none. When Biden came in, he took all the sanctions off.
Here's another note to this, Jenna. The United States and Iran are scheduled to meet for their third round of talks on April 26 in Oman.
Yeah, we'll be watching. Kelly, on the president's tariff plan, he's still dealing with the face-off with China. Is he still confident that China will eventually negotiate with the United States?
Well, Jenna, he is. The president is still very confident that China will ultimately come to the negotiating table on tariffs and fair trade with the United States. But for now, China is still saying it will fight to the end. In fact, China is now warning other countries in its region to not make any deals with the United States. China's Commerce Ministry sent messages to the governments of Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea, stating it firmly opposes any party reaching a deal at the expense of China's interests, and China would retaliate if that happens. Well, the fallout from all of this is being seen and felt on Wall Street, as you can imagine, which is still experiencing a serious case of jitters. Stocks and the dollar tumbled as investors showed their disdain for uncertainty. Adding to that, there is concern about President Trump's criticism of Federal Reserve Bank Chair Jerome Powell. The president is not pleased with Mr. Powell's decision to not lower interest rates, which adds to Wall Street's uncertainty. Jenna?
All right, senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Thank you, Kelly. And stay with us. We want to tell you about an important case that's going before the Supreme Court this week. It involves parents' rights to have a say about what's taught to their kids in public school and what they can opt out of when it comes to LGBTQ content. Faith Nation continues right after this.
The Montgomery County Schools' decision to include LGBTQ-themed storybooks in pre-K and elementary classrooms is fueling this intense legal battle, one that could test the boundaries of religious freedom and public education. Love is love!
In this case, though, it's turning into more of a battle.
These are not books about sex.
The controversy started in 2022 after the school board approved several books for pre-K and kindergartners. The list included My Rainbow, about a black transgender girl whose mother creates a special wig to match her identity. Uncle Bobby's Wedding, where a young girl worries about her uncle marrying another man.
F for feathers, for flags, and for fun.
And Pride Puppy, An alphabet book following a family and their dog at a pride parade.
It's really important for us to center LGBTQ plus voices.
School officials insist this material forms a cornerstone of their inclusive education.
That commitment requires that we cultivate an environment where our LGBTQ plus students feel welcomed and supported.
After being stopped from allowing their children to opt out of these lessons, a group of parents from diverse faiths, including Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, sued the Montgomery County Board of Education.
We just wanted the accommodation to say, listen, when there are certain teachings within MCPS that contradict our religious views, and there are subsequent discussions by untrained teachers on these topics, specifically for elementary school, that we felt that that was problematic.
Initially, the school district granted their request.
I'm here to tell them my 7-year-old daughter, she's not ready for this.
Then later reversed the decision, calling the books part of language arts, not sex education. They claim the material builds literacy and cultural awareness and does not provide explicit instruction on sexuality.
The board just forged ahead and cut the parents out of the process completely.
While lower courts have ruled against the parents twice, the case is now before the Supreme Court.
These are just books that happen to include LGBTQIA plus characters.
In court papers, the school district compares the materials to classic fairy tales, arguing the storybooks are no more sex education than stories like Cinderella and Snow White.
Because curriculum and these administrative policies are set at the local level, it really does allow a lot of these school administrations to become sort of mini fiefdoms. And when they refuse, for example, the right of parents to opt out, they're really running these in a way that is essentially undemocratic at its very core.
Montgomery County is reportedly one of the few school districts nationwide that prohibits parental opt-outs on topics related to sexuality and gender.
All we wanted is the accommodation, not necessarily to ban the books or remove the books as it's been reported.
Experts warn the High Court's ruling could have far-reaching effects, potentially shaping how objectionable content is taught in public school classrooms.
In terms of what they have faced in Montgomery County and what potentially the Supreme Court could hold, it will implicate at what point may schools infringe upon the rights of parents, both in terms of teaching the children their own faith and also in directing in the upbringing of their children.
The Supreme Court's conservative majority recently expanded religious rights in key cases, one allowing a web designer to refuse projects conflicting with her beliefs, another strengthening protections for employees seeking accommodations. This case could also set a precedent for future disputes. At the Supreme Court, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. And up next, the stark warning about measles outbreaks spreading across the United States. Welcome back. Health officials say the growing concern over measles is, quote, like a forest fire. More than 800 cases have been reported in 27 states. Medical reporter Lori Johnson has more.
Measles, one of the most contagious viruses in the world, can be prevented with a vaccine. In fact, back in 2000, so many Americans were vaccinated that measles was considered eliminated. However, vaccine rates have fallen, leading to sickness, hospitalization, and even death. Workers at Covenant Medical Center in West Texas, one of the hardest hit areas, gather in the hospital chapel to pray. A 6-year-old unvaccinated girl died here, the first U.S. measles death in over a decade. The hospital has treated more than 20 other patients.
You see them struggling to breathe, they don't want to eat or drink.
Doctors recommend children get their first measles vaccine at 1 year old, then a booster at age 4. Adults can get them too.
There's no harm, even if they did receive those 2 childhood doses, in going out and getting a booster now as an adult.
The CDC says measles spreads in areas where kindergarten vaccine rates dip below 95%.
Do I trust all the vaccines? No. I'm not sure if they're always for my best.
This West Texas pastor says despite his vaccine hesitancy, he believes his congregants should decide for themselves.
With this measles situation, I can just honestly tell you that we haven't taken any steps as a church.
Well-known vaccine skeptic Robert Kennedy Jr. is now America's top health official. He said the current outbreaks are not unusual.
There have been 4 measles outbreaks this year. In this country last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
Kennedy previously linked the measles vaccine to autism.
It's disheartening to see people in power that are not willing to recognize the importance of vaccines, not willing to recognize the safety of vaccines. And it's discouraging for us who are on the front lines.
Despite several studies debunking any link between the measles vaccine and autism, Kennedy reportedly asked the CDC to look into it further. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thank you, Lori. And still ahead, a beautiful day for an Easter celebration at the White House. Welcome back. A reminder, our new podcast, Heaven Meets Earth, featuring Abigail Robertson and Ryan Bethay, is now out. You can listen and subscribe on the CBN Family app or YouTube or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And finally tonight, a tradition dating back to 1878, the annual White House Easter egg roll. Amidst the blooming flowers, the colorful eggs, and a giant Easter bunny, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump addressed thousands about the true meaning of the celebration.
Easter is special, and it's one of our favorite days. It's one of our favorite periods of time. We're honoring Jesus Christ, and we're going to honor Jesus Christ very powerfully.
Amen. And the main event involves children rolling painted eggs across the South Lawn. Mine included. Grace, who you saw, is 3, almost 3. Thomas just turned 1. And my husband, Joe, there. It is an amazing event. It's huge. Our tickets were for the first time slot at 7:30 this morning, and it was packed. Thousands of people there for just that time slot. Highlights included a live marine band and an Easter egg-shaped Rice Krispie for my daughter. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.